Today we're going to be going over the exchange variation of the Caro-Kann because this one is the most common below 1500 elo. So after pawn in the center, white captures, making it the exchange. Now, if you're struggling with this opening, from my experience, it is because you're focusing way too much on the red side of the board. So, in fact, because the C pawn is missing from the black side, we are supposed to take advantage of that by applying pressure on the open file, which ultimately will make our focus zone to be that side. Now, in order to make sure you never get mated inside the exchange, you just need to watch out that no white pieces get to hang out inside this green square for longer than a move. Meaning that whenever one of your opponent's pieces is entering that square, just make sure to attack it immediately and you're gonna be safe. Now, to be even more specific, to help you a little bit get into the last 30 meters of the attack, well, it doesn't get easier than that. You just have to focus on that square. That's where the magic happens. If you want to see how this strategy plays in some actual games, let's dive into the examples that I've prepared from my speedrun account. Good morning, everybody. We are back, and opponent plays e4. Wow, how nice! Opponent enabling the Caro-Kann, and not only enabling the Caro-Kann, but also making it even stronger because he plays the hillbilly attack, which is sort of I don't really know. 1000 elo. Do they really wanna play Queen f3? I think they just do bishop development no matter what they play against. But this move, needless to say, it's bad because it allows d5 with a tempo. Now, important, you wanna treat this the same way we would be playing against the exchange variation, which is just gonna be a slightly improved version. So, exchange variation of the Caro-Kann, knights out, bishop outside the pawn chain, ideally g4, if not possible f5 is fine as well, and then we do e6, bishop e7, castle. So just standard development, while in the middle game we're gonna be trying to attack on the queen side. Look at the open file. This is the open file because there is no more black pawn. So that is going to be where we focus pretty much here. We're going to be pushing these pawns. Notice we have these 2 against 3. We're going to be delivering minority attack. Okay, h3. So notice that he's stopping my bishop to g4. But I'm going to go to f5. I mentioned in the beginning, f5, it's also okay. I don't really like to play e5. It kind of gives you a vibe that you're controlling the center. But from my experience, that's a bit loose. And I'd much rather prefer to restrict our opponent. So instead of playing e5, the way to go, or at least usually the way I play it, is e6. e6, having pawn protected by pawn, making life kind of miserable for the b3 bishop. The bishop isn't really doing anything on b3, which if you compare it with a position where you push e5 and sometimes he plays d3, bishop g5, he takes, the pawn gets a bit loose, the bishop has potential to activate. I think hillbilly bishop, this is the antidote. You just play e6 and you send him to sleep. It's good night for the bishop already. d3 by my opponent. I think I'm just gonna do the normal thing. Yet again, do not get confused by the move order, the way this game started. What makes it an exchange variation is the fact that we see the move ed5. So I'm just gonna be playing bishop e7 castle, and we have to keep the eyes on the ball, not on the movement of our opponent that's trying to trick us, like in football. Keep the eyes on the ball. Just ignore the fancy bicycle kicks. So castle, we have just completed our development, and the task will be to focus inside this rectangle. One small difference, let's say, compared to the normal exchange is that white has a pawn on d3. So normally the pawn would be on d4, and that would perhaps enable some knight a5, knight to c4 maneuvers. But it's really not a big deal. We can just play the same. And very important starting move, which gets overlooked all the time, rook c8. This gets overlooked because it's the kind of move that maybe at first glance it looks like it's really not doing anything. Okay, dude, you just move the rook. What are you trying to do? Like attack your own knight? No, the point is no black pawn on the c file. The rook is not creating a threat on the next move, but it will be incredibly well placed in the long run because it's already fighting for all these squares. Those are a lot of squares. And only then we can try to go for like the typical stuff. 95. 95, 95, 95. Interesting, interesting, interesting. So I think I'm just gonna go with the simple rule of whenever opponent is stepping in our half of the board with a piece, we're gonna try to get rid of it immediately. And this is, by the way, a rule that you can guide yourself with in general, and you don't have to overthink or be stressed for no reason. I actually realized I was doing a lesson a few days ago, and I was showing a maneuver, and I noticed it depends, okay, up to every person, but some low-rated guys really tend to be overly afraid of playing chess in general. They're always overthinking, overcalculating to, okay, I do this, he does that, but what if I do this and he does that again? But a good way to get rid of it is as long as your opponent doesn't have any pieces in your half of the board, you can chill pretty much for the most part. So he has a rook there. Don't think it's really particularly that threatening, but I think I'm just gonna try to get rid of it. Also notice how the knight doesn't have any squares because it's restricted by the enemy pawns. So I think perhaps I'm gonna combine the best of both worlds to have ideas to reroute the knight and also get rid of his rook. So notice that no pieces in our half of the board, no pawn breaking coming from my opponent. We can very much chill. We don't have to try to see everything that my opponent can do. It's like you cross the street. Okay, recommendable you look both ways anyways, even on a one-way street. But for the most part, there's nobody gonna be coming from the other side. So we should chill. Okay, now that we're chilling, we can continue the minority attack. So let's do a6, b5. Could also do knight c5, just eliminate the enemy bishop. Should I go for the eliminating the enemy bishop? I could do that right away. It's a pretty passive bishop, so I don't have to like immediately kill it since it's not really active. But let's start with take it slow. Minority attack. a6, b5. I have all my pieces protected, so nothing to be afraid of. Queen f3 may be interesting move here for him. On queen f3, we'll have to be a bit careful. because my opponent is would be threatening a small tactic. So you can try to pause the video and think about the idea with queen f3. Why is queen f3 a bit dangerous if you're not careful? I expect him also to develop the dark square bishop, but we'll see. The idea with queen f3 is that it's adding pressure on the bishop. So after queen f3, already some knight takes on d5 or bishop takes on d5 comes to consideration, because ed lets the bishop undefended. So on queen to f3, I think is just gonna be enough to slide the bishop back and then carry on with our life. Okay, knight e2. Knight e2. So the knight is moving away, perhaps maneuvering to one of these squares. I don't think it really matters that much, because yeah, we cannot really do anything to stop it. So we're just gonna continue with our plan. b5. He does a3. Okay, he did a3, so he's creating a square for the bishop. I can put the knight on c5. I don't really want to rush with putting the knight on c5. He just goes bishop a2. I don't want to block rook's path with the knight for no reason. Another interesting move that we can play, by the way, bishop f6. Especially because he doesn't have a pawn on d4. This move can be quite annoying for him to deal with. So I think I'm going to start it this way. Do I want to start it that way? Alternatively, I could do knight c5, bishop f6. Let's do it like this. Knight c5, tempo move. I think it cannot really hurt to throw in tempo move. And I just want to activate this bishop. The bishop on f6 is going to be quite annoying for my opponent, because he's going to have a hard time completing development. We see knight g3, threatening to give me double pawns. Now, I could enter the complications with knight takes on b3, but I think I'm just going to sidestep, keep it very simple. I don't want to give him bishop for no reason. Remember that bishops are slightly more valuable pieces. So if the knight is worth 3 points in general, I see the bishop as being worth 3.25. I think that's quite accurate. So I'm just going to keep. And big positional threat next. If knight takes on b3 is allowed, it's like a resignable position for my opponent strategically. Just to give you an idea of how thin this margin is in chess. It looks like for the time being it's just a normal game. There's not a lot going on. Well, allow me to take on b3. Completely spoil that pawn structure. That combined with the bishop pair, that's just going to be an easy win. You really don't need more than that to dominate chess games. So, really friendly advice for my opponent. Bishop a2 should be a no-brainer. And then I'm going to activate this guy. Okay. a4, a4, a4. He really played a4, didn't he? He wants ab. I'm trying to see whether there's any other instructive way of playing this game other than going for the trivial knight capture, but we're gonna go for it. We're gonna go for it, and we're gonna be focusing on solid chess. We also have full open file for the rook. Remember the move that you didn't want to play? That can actually win us the game now. Okay, I have idea to infiltrate. But before we do that, I think I prefer to begin with a bishop, making this guy stuck. My bishop is really, it's a good bishop, but not having pressure over there. And important, do not undouble your opponent's pawns for no reason. That would be a huge mistake. That's common for low elo, just releasing the tension. Don't undouble his pawns. Your advantage is that, okay, despite the bishop pair, 2 pawns are pretty much canceling 3 pawns. So we're already in a position where if we trade everything, let only naked kings on the board, black is easily winning because we have 5 against 4 majority. So we don't have an extra pawn, but because these guys are doubled, it pretty much feels like an extra pawn. So again, you do a little bit of focus pocus here. You just trade all the pieces. Free win. It's like he resigns. So big advantage. Big advantage. Okay, bishop e3. I can take. Do I want to take? Yeah, let's just take. If he wasn't moving the bishop because it was stuck, my plan was to trade queen and these pawns are getting weak. So collecting the bish, the pawn with the bish, and then this square becomes available since no pawn is guarding it anymore. So bishop c3. Probably about to be played next move. Retreating with a tempo. And then I think I'm gonna build a shelter on c3 for the bishop. So maybe b4. Supporting the square. Bishop d2, b4, very nice move. Preparing the rook to infiltrate. I could have maybe considered the pawn, but a bit loose. Just I like to play consolidating moves when we're winning in general. Goes knight e2. Possible move. Yet again, some ideas, but let's just keep it simple. Get the queen out. Get the queen developed. Get ready to recapture. Maybe queen b5 next to pressure. If he takes, my pawn is gonna get closer to promotion, and then queen's path also opens to b3, so common mistake would be rook c2 for getting queen b3. Queen c2 may be interesting block here, but perhaps just rook b8, switching attention. Attention! We have to switch attention to the unprotected pawn. So my pawn is obviously gonna get fixated. I know that's not how you're supposed to say it, but I find it funny that the pawn is gonna get fixated, but we're gonna do rook b8. The pawn on b3 is gonna be probably lost, or at least we get to support. So queen c2, like expected, rook b8. If rook b1, at least queen b5. This move is coming. I should also watch out and make a luft in the near future. Make a luft just to make sure there is no danger for my king. But knight c3, pause the video for the final time because the opponent is self-pinning. d4, I want to watch out for knight d4, but it shouldn't be working. I get to collect both queen and rook. So all we had to do to pretty much win this game easily was develop our pieces in exchange variation fashion. We just had to realize that after he played the move, he captures on d5. That makes it an exchange variation. So you do the exchange development, and we attacked his bishop. Not only we attacked his bishop, but he refused to move it, which allowed us to create double pawns and sprinkle the bishop pair on top of that. He gets perfect recipe for a strategic disaster. So rook c2, let's just make a luft. I mean, I don't have to make a luft, but I'll just make a luft. It would be embarrassing to get back rank mated in a video. Okay, just, I mean, could take whatever pawns or whatever rooks as well. And I'm gonna have to play a bit faster now, approaching the last 10 seconds, but we should be just in time. Just in time for lunch. Lunch is served. I'm about to get A lasagna with queens. Well, it's gonna be only one queen. It's gonna be a diet lasagna, but still a lasagna. Okay, have a check. Dude, this guy is not resigning. I'm way too casual for this. Why is he not resigning? Well, obviously, the idiot he's playing against has only 6 seconds, so might as well just play. Okay, I'm gonna bring my king. And I'm gonna seal the mating net. Okay, I think we got this. King d4, king c3, and mate. Boop. Alright. Okay. After we got the double pawns, the game was pretty straightforward, but the situation gets exponentially more difficult when there are no such obvious pawn weaknesses. And this is gonna be the topic of the next game. Welcome back, everybody. Getting another opponent that plays e4. So we're gonna be attempting to play the Caro-Kann against a French opponent who is happening to play bishop to c4. Alright, we're gonna step in the center, and this pretty much normally just goes back into exchange variation territory. So no matter what kind of weird move order the opponent is playing, as long as you see this capture on d5, it means you can treat it universally as the normal exchange variation. Assuming you know how to play the normal exchange variation. If you don't, this is what we're about to discuss. Okay, goes for the check. So blocking with the bishop is possible. Let's block it with a knight this time. This is also reasonable. I want to get a little bit more diversity, as diverse this can get in the Caro-Kann. And we can see opponent already made a bit of a concession, giving up bishop for knight. So kind of an, let's say, negative trade for him, since bishops are worth 3 points and a quarter and knights only 3. Considering that he wants knight e5 can be somewhat annoying, I'm gonna start with a pin. And since he already played bishop b5, giving up his bishop, I can sort of do the same. I don't want to keep, because g4, knight e5 then could be somewhat annoying, although definitely playable, I feel like. But I just want to steer the game into this very common scenario. If you're like 1000 elo up to like 1500, this is pretty much the kind of game that you're gonna have most of the times. This combined with the advance, these are gonna be your most frequent Caro-Kann middle games. So important, I just do e6, simple move, pawn protected by pawn. Notice that I am not overextending with the move e5, because it can easily become vulnerable after rook e1, then you overextend, he plays d3, suddenly you have a bit of a target, and it starts to be very messy. So instead I just like to play it simple, e6, and then in exchange variation, you have this choice between bishop d6 and bishop e7, but I think the easiest is just to always play bishop e7, because bishop g5, the spin happens quite a bunch in low elo, so you don't have to worry about anything. Even if he plays bishop to f4, we can either ignore it or lose a tempo later on to trade bishops. I'm not really worried about that. The plan is to simply castle, and then the whole focus will be on the queenside. So you want to get ready to unleash queenside play. The biggest mistake that you can be making as a Caro-Kann player in the exchange variation is to try to mate. Mating is not how we do it here. Now, my opponent played knight to a4, which is actually quite an interesting move, because the main pawn break to get the party going is to play c5. So he's sort of playing against it, I guess. Now, there are a few drawbacks with his knight a4. The biggest is that it's no longer fighting for the center, which is why in general these knight moves on the side are not great. You can just do knight e4. Now, besides centralizing the knight, this is also a move that's part of our plan because it's pushing c5. If somehow I didn't have knight e4, I could have played knight d7 as well, with idea to unleash the pawn play next. So I just do knight e4. I'm not afraid of a move like c4. Obviously I cannot take because I hang the knight. But c4 can be ignored and the pawn on d4, it's weak in the long run. So plays bishop e3 instead. Still, I cannot go c5, but I am very tempted to play a move that's supporting it. Like queen a5, targeting the knight, expecting him to just defend with b3, and then looking to do c5. dc, knight c5, bishop c5. Yeah, I think that's actually exactly the kind of game that we want. So he must protect the knight. Moving it just loses a pawn. I really hope he plays b3. He has to protect the knight. There's not a tragedy incoming, so it's definitely a safe move to play. And queen a5, notice that it's a tempo move, developing while connecting rooks. So just in general, as a tip for coordination of your pieces, you want to have the rooks connected. And okay, b3, key moment of the game. If you miss this idea, this pawn break, you're not going to have any interesting play. You're going to feel like the Caro-Kann doesn't make sense, and you also probably will unsubscribe. So remember the next move, because now the whole thing comes in together nicely after c5. I'm assuming we're going to get a lot of trades, and we are just going to be having long-term pressure on the queen side in this typical heavy pieces endgame, thanks to the open files. So I'm going to show you what I mean in a second. We see that opponent captured. We have many ways to recapture. For order of operations, you want to prioritize the lower value piece. So I can take with knight, bishop, or queen. Knight is worth 3 points, bishop 3¼ queen is worth 9 points. So I pick the lowest piece. Taking it with the knight, obviously I have to watch out, no fork or anything like that. But yeah, no things of that nature, and expecting him to trade everything, or at least trade a pair of knights. He has to exchange this guy because it's already kind of misplaced. And our whole idea will be to pretty much create a weak pawn. Now, my opponent played a pretty bad move, allowing me to take on a4 and create doubled isolated pawns plus isolated pawn on the c file. I think for instructive purposes, I'm just gonna play rook fc8 and not punish him. I want to give him another move to trade on c5 to kind of keep the game more interesting. That one will be a little bit too easy to convert. So I want to show you how to play against proper play. I know many of you in the comments are asking me to play higher elo games. Guys, you have to wait. We're going to get there. We're actually doing a speed run. So we're taking it step by step. Step by step. Despite the fact that I'm not titling this video as a speedrun, we are doing a speedrun. So I'm gonna take it gradually from 1000 all the way to 2000 at least. I'm also planning to do a live speedrun at some point, but I'm already promising too many things. Okay, bishop h6, threatening to mate. I have easy ways to defend that. I can play g6, but you want to get into the habit of defending with a tempo. So I play bishop f6, protecting the mate while attacking the enemy rook. So that's the optimal move. Yeah, it's a pity opponent refuses to trade everything on c5. We're gonna do a little bit of analysis after the game, and I'll show you how that would have played out. In a nutshell, black has a slightly better position with zero risks. I mean, computer evaluation, I would expect it to be close to -1, but it could also be like -0.5. It depends. It's hard to tell, but the key idea is you're never really risking anything as black, and such games are just almost impossible for an opponent to play from a practical perspective because they just have no active moves. Now, I can take with the queen or with the rook. I will stay away from the rook capture, and you will find the reason why. Pause the video and try to find why taking with the rook is probably not the best move. Because you want to be aware of the fork. So queen supports the fork. This can be nasty. So I'm just going to take with the queen. I could take the rook, but after rook takes queen c5, I am getting mated, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep it simple. Opponent has some really unpleasant questions with this pawn on the c file. This is how all of our game was prepared. Now I'm just gonna go for a queen trade. My dream is to enter this endgame where we are pressuring the weak pawns. So we have a clear target on the c file. It's a pawn that cannot be protected by other pawns, and hopefully he's not gonna forget about the bishop. Okay, this is very nice. We get him into typical rook endgame. I think I'm gonna trade bishops because I give him also a bit of a weak pawn. I can win the pawn instantly with bishop b2 and then rook takes on c2, so I'm just removing the defender. But I think it's even nicer if we go for this long-term play with rook c3. So put this rook in his throat, fix the weak pawn on c2, and then a5, a4. It's gonna be very nice play. Now already rook c8, I think wins the pawn by force because his rook is getting pretty much, overloaded. Okay, rook c8, I mean, he cannot do anything. Rook c8 if rook f2, I just pick up e3. That's simple play. Another idea is a5 to provoke a4. And after rook c8, if he defends rook f2, another additional idea has been brought to the plate. There is rook takes b3 as another way to win pawn in such situations. But I'm just going to play it simple now. Okay, rook c8. What to do for white? It's just that simple and that annoying to deal with. This is why Caro-Kann is such an annoying opening to deal with. You just play safe, and as long as he doesn't get an attack against your king, you just have this free pressure on the queen side that most of the time is going to be enough to win a pawn, and with that, the game, more or less. Okay, try e4. Good try by him to initiate some trades. Probably it's best to accept the double pawns because his rook is very passive and I can try to bring my king close to the middle. These pawns feel pretty slow. Alternative is to take everything on c2, ed, but we're trading quite a lot of pawns. So my intuition is that we should go for this more like imbalanced position. Although you still have decent winning chances in the other one as well. Make sure to not get back ranked, and now you simply have to focus on your stronger side. Our stronger side is that we have these pawns. Endgame concept, use the king to the middle in the endgame. I can actually also bring my king to stop his pawns. Yeah, king f7 I'm gonna play like no matter what. I'm just trying to calculate a little bit what can happen if king d2, but yeah, I mean, I will have to enter this position with rook g3. Now it gets more into the somewhat technical phase of the game. So at this point, it's a raw calculation pretty much. So far, I've showed you typical ideas. Now I'm pretty much trying to figure out stuff on the go. But because this rook is sort of pinned f4, f3, I'm just looking to do something quick, although these pawns are just very slow, because if they start advancing, they become quite weak. So I can try to play for f4, f3, or I can try to bring the king. King f6, king e5, which I think I'm gonna do. Just try to bring your king as active as possible in the endgame. So I saw this, but c5 I have king d5 getting close. And b4, king d4 already. With rook a3 incoming, should be dangerous. Okay, maybe just push the pawn. f3 idea, rook c3 idea as well. Yeah, these moves I'm pretty sure of, felt quite natural. Now we'll have to see. It's very tricky for him to play because c5, it's almost like losing the pawn. Like I can go rook c3, and on this king move, I no longer have f3, but I have maybe e3, king e2, king e4 with rook g2, f3 idea. But maybe just simpler, I get to the other side. So I get to the other side, he tries to like block check. It's a bit tricky. E3 could be a very clever move just to force his king to stay passive. I'm gonna go with e3. Feels a bit safer, although now it gets somewhat double-edged. This is a good position where you'd love to calculate for a few minutes for final touches, but I don't have that time on the clock. But I do have a feeling that my rook should always have this resource to cut the pawns. So it should be rather safe to play. Maybe I also want to consider king d4, but now I cannot do king d4 because it allows check. So I have to go here. I have rook g2 as a little tactical trick to try to queen. And now probably it's time to play it slow and turn onto the pawn unless I calculate some forced win. King d3, c6. Yeah, I'm not in time to go rook g2. I have to play in turn. And he's not in time with rook c1 because I take b4, but now his pawns are frozen. So he's somewhat running out of moves. Although rook d1 check, king f1. Okay, king e4, king f1, e2. Okay, I have to play king c6. I feel like just to keep the pawns. Okay, so he's gonna play with king f1, and then I wanted to do e4, f3. Yeah, I'm probably messing it up. I feel like I'm losing control. But now when he allows me, he's losing control. I get to push the pawns. Wow, very tricky at the end. I was not in time to calculate, but he took the aggressive route. Now I should be able to mate him shortly. Okay, let me just play the last moves and we'll analyze a bit, see what went wrong. Okay, I get nice skewer to win the rook. Yeah, we got him very nicely into the winning position. I just didn't have time to do the calculation part. Very bad, I know. Very, very bad. Okay. If you want to learn the other variations of the Caro-Kann, since we only looked at the exchange, there are 2 more. Make sure to click on that video. I'll see you there.